Karina and other members of the United We Dream action team when she and others shaved their head, and it was very emotional. There were people crying, chanting, and overall, it was just a very moving experience. So without further ado, I'd like to present Karina Ruiz De Diaz.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. So happy to be in this space with all of you this evening. And yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can start the presentation. There you go. Hope you can see it. Okay, so my keynote, I decided to name it Immigrants Beyond DACA, Undeniable, Unafraid, and Here to Stay. And although, you know, sometimes it feels like I am afraid, you know, I've learned to overcome those fears because that's how I show resilience and that's how we've been able to move forward with the movement. So the organization I work for and I'm a executive director for is Arizona Dream Act Coalition, ADAC. So I wanted to start with that. The mission to Arizona Dream Act Coalition is, as a nonprofit, is to promote educational success for immigrant youth, increase civic engagement, and also advocate for policies that are going to help the immigrants in Arizona and our mixed status families to thrive. Our vision is that we want to see a world where there's a documented immigrant community, along with the different intersectionalities that we have. We're workers, some of us are LGBTQ, I'm not, but I have friends and really dear co-workers that are members of the LGBTQ community. You know, we care about the planet, so we have different intersectionalities. We want to make sure that we attain education, justice, and we live without fear of political persecution. I will share a little bit of my story in a little bit, but I wanted to give a little bit of context about looking back at this movement, what it has meant for me. I came to the US in 1999 with my parents at the age of 15. In 2001, I was going to school, San Isidro High School, here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I heard the first time about the DREAM Act in 2001. It was introduced to Congress, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I just heard that it could benefit people like myself, students that were in high school, providing like some sort of pathway to citizenship. I wasn't sure what it was. I just thought, well, maybe it kind of applies to me from what I heard in the news. I was in high school and was not very involved in immigration activism because I was very, very in the shadows at the time. It was not something that I would share with my peers about, you know, my immigration status or theirs. Like we try not to talk about it in that time. 2006, Prop 300 came about. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's now a law that was passed by 70% of the electorate in Arizona. And it basically requires to show proof of legal status or citizenship in order to be eligible for in-state tuition. This was passed, like I said, by 70% of the electorate. Some of us made phone calls. I remember joining Mi Familia Vota and talking to Latinos about why this was harmful for people like myself. We got pushback because of the way that it was told to the voters. People were saying, if citizens from California can have to pay out-of-state tuition, why shouldn't these illegals, right? And it was very harmful because I didn't have a voice. As I share, I was in the shadows and very, very afraid. I found the courage to make some phone calls and hearing from Latinos that their children were losing on scholarships because of people like me. When I was paying for my tuition as an undocumented student was harmful. And I realized that Latinos in Arizona didn't realize, right, who those young immigrant students were or our realities. that's when really the immigrant movement was like starting to form between 2006, 2008. There were other anti-immigrant laws passed here in Arizona. You probably remember SB 1070, right? We, as Arizona being ground zero. 2010, again, along with SB 1070, we heard the reintroduction of the DREAM Act. And again, I wonder what is this about, this legislation, right? Um, what is it about it that I could maybe benefit of? I remember seeing people like Eric Andiola, Dulce Matus, these activists in DC getting arrested. And I remember they said undocumented and unafraid. And to me, that was like, wow, like there's other people like myself that are actually willing to come out and risk being detained. And so that's when I like started to get intrigued about the movement. 2012, that came about, and I seek help. But in seeking help, I also realized that there was a lot of need for for help in the community. So I asked the organizers of that DACA forum, the first DACA forum here in Arizona, about 3,000 people. I said, I need help with applying for this, but I also want to help so that that help is expedited, right? Where do I start working? And they sent me to a training, a meeting, and then next thing I knew, I was assisting attorneys with going through the PowerPoint for people filling out their applications. I was participating in DACA clinics, and that was very empowering. Then in 2014, we heard about DAPA. Some of you might remember what that was. It could have benefit. It was similar to DACA, but it would have benefit parents of citizens or legal residents. And that was a hope for me because my parents could have applied for that, since one of my sisters who came a year before myself, she was a resident. So that was a little bit of hope, but then it never made it out of the court system because it was appealed by Texas. And that was, one of, I think, the lowest moments that I had in this fight, seeing that I had DACA with protections, and it's not what we deserve because it's not permanent and it's not a pathway to citizenship. And it has been a roller coaster because we have it, and then next thing you know, a court strikes it, and then we get it again, and then we have to keep fighting. So it's been a really roller coaster of emotions, having this temporary solution that, to me, it was a light of hope for my parents, although I knew it was nothing permanent. But not even that was able to see the light of the day. 2016 elections came about. We all know the results. And then in 2017, DACA got rescinded. That's when I decided to participate in the Clean Dream Act campaign, and I got arrested. I decided to do civil disobedience in Washington, D.C. that year, and in the hopes that there was something done for people with DACA. Then we realized that it was bigger than just dreamers, right? We had to fight for other immigrants like TPS holders, like farm workers. And that's how the Dream and Promise Act came about, from those three groups of immigrants coming together and demanding some solution. And then thanks to that, advocating to that, all the movement that we have been able to build, DACA was reopened in 2020 again, and it's like I said, it's been really hard. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so you can see me, but it's been really emotional. Last year, I lost my dad due to COVID. My dad was applying for a U visa. He was a victim of assault at gunpoint. He wanted to go back to his hometown in Oaxaca, Mexico, where my parents are from. And unfortunately, he passed away. And within all that pain, I've been so blessed because I had the opportunity of bringing my father back to Oaxaca through advance parole. The Texas court appealed DACA, and the New York court said, okay, USCIS, you have to reinstate DACA. After that, that court in Texas decided to stop DACA for initial applicants, and with that advance parole, we had the blessing of the court in New York saying, no, it has to be reinstated to what it was in 2012. And with that, I was able to bring my dad applying with advance parole back to Oaxaca to have his burial there. It was difficult to not have my mother there with me, but I recognize that that is, it was to me a way to heal from that family separation that we had. In my family, my dad passed away without seeing my brothers and my sister for 22 years, and it was very hard to come to the realization that that reunification is not gonna happen, at least in this earth, because he's gone. And I told people that I could get citizenship tomorrow, and that's not gonna bring my dad back to have that family reunification. And it is a story of millions of people that we lose loved ones in both sides of the border. So when politicians talk about, oh, like this policy or the border, I think to myself that this is bigger than that. This is like our lives that are being lost, and immigration needs to be looked at with more humanitarian and dignifying eyes. I'm going to go ahead and go back to share my screen to show the rest of the presentation. And there are some statistics here from the Center for American Progress on how DACA has benefited the life of millions of DACA young immigrants. 69% have moved to a better job. 90% are obtaining a driver's licenses, which in Arizona we had to fight our governors to all the way through the Supreme Court to keep our driver's licenses. And thank God we won that, because if Arizona Democratic Coalition as a plaintiff, along with another few plaintiffs that were individual DACA recipients, didn't fight that case, the chances that people with DACA would have lost their driver's licenses across the country was very high, because when you're in the federal level, it affects the whole nation, not just the states. So I remember being in those conversations with the attorneys. What do we do? How do we figure out a strategy to make sure that we win that case? Because it wasn't just the driver's licenses in Arizona, but in the whole United States that for DACA recipients that were in the line. People have purchased their first car, their homes, right? So, I mean, these are some of the positive things that have been achieved by DACA recipients because we got that work permit. So, but let's see, where's DACA? Oh, let me back down a little bit. So DACA, as it was mentioned, DACA, it's something temporary. Oh, let me go back. It's something temporary. It's it was done through a memo, an executive order by former President Obama. And when I learned from other leaders in the movement that were involved before myself, is that Obama didn't wake up one day and let me share my screen again. Obama was not like he didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm gonna do this for these young immigrants, right? I remember watching like former President Obama in the news, and he would say things like, oh, we need to do something for these young people, like they are part of our community, they deserve to be integrated, but I cannot do anything. It's up to Congress to do something. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's kind of nice that he wants to help us, but I can't believe he can't do anything, right? And I'm glad that leaders in the movement um, figured out, along with attorneys, that there could be, if there wasn't a pathway to citizenship, that there could be um, a protection, right, from deportation. So you're not going to give us a solution, at least protect us for now while we continue working on getting something permanent. So DACA was meant to be something temporary, while Congress under the Obama administration worked on a permanent solution. Um, when I learned that it wasn't the president that did it by himself, but that young immigrants, students like myself, push him, show him the solution on how to stop some of the deportations that happen in our community, and that translated into deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA. When I learned that, I remember feeling so empowered and so hopeful. I think to me, I was like very, like, for the first time in my life, I thought I had some agency. I said, well, if these people were able to push the president to do something about our situation, maybe I can get involved and do something about it too. Instead of just feeling alone at home, helpless, and like not knowing what to do. Um, it was a blessing for me to come to the organization, to ADAC, because I started feeling empowered, and I started learning what the political situation was. I started learning and understanding, like, what does it mean for these judges to make these rulings, and how does it affect DACA, and how we can affect and impact the realities that we live in the country. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to be silenced anymore. So right now, with DACA, um, what is happening right now is that in July 16 of 2021, the judge in Judge Hannon in Texas, he gave a ruling saying, okay, right now he does not believe that DACA is constitutional because it was executive order by President Obama through a memo. The Biden administration is trying to convert that into a rule. There's actually a comment period that I will encourage you to go, and I will share a little bit of where and how to do it in a minute. But there is a period for comment on DACA, and we need to get as many comments, positive, hopefully, for the program as possible, from people who are DACA recipients, as well as people who are allies and who have seen how this has impacted our lives in a positive way for your students, for your neighbors, for your friends that have DACA, right? It is temporary. We know that right now, because of this decision from Judge Hannon, we can continue renewing DACA for those of us who have it. We cannot we can turn in new applications, but they will not be processed. It's funny because the judge didn't prevent immigration from accepting those applications or receiving them for new applicants. However, he told them that they cannot process them. So right now we're telling people, hey, like, since immigration is accepting them, and the chance of them sharing your information with ICE, it is there, the chance, but it's not like a priority they're doing right now. We're encouraging people to turn in their applications for DACA if they qualify for it, and if they have a consultation with an attorney that would make sure that they're okay to turn in their case. They don't have a high risk because they don't have any misdemeanors. So for us, since immigration is accepting them, it's worth that shot, because if things change in court, these cases can benefit from that. So and also it shows proof that we still need the program for people that are turning 16 years of age. One of the requirements to apply for DACA is that you have to come into the country before you were 16 years old, you had to be present since 2007 continuously. That means you couldn't leave the country for more than 3 months. You cannot have more than 3 insignificant misdemeanors. And you have to be present at the time when the announcement was made, and not have any kind of legal status at that time. So it is a series of requirements. We have to show proof for more than a decade that we're present since in the United States on or before June 15 of 2007. So that's a long time. And sometimes it's hard for students to pull that information, and if they drop out of school or they didn't go to school, it becomes even more of a burden for them to prove that they've been here for that long. We know that DACA is temporary, that it has been attacked, that not just locally, but that due to the advocacy that we have done, right now we're seeing that there's a lot of hope for immigration to be included in the budget reconciliation package. We wanted to have something called registry, which would provide a pathway to citizenship for more than 7 million people. That was individuals who arrived into the US before January 1st, 2011. However, that's been in jeopardy. There's moderate senators like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin who have been not coming all the way out in support for immigration being included in the budget reconciliation. I've read that Senator Manchin had concerns about the border, and and Senator Sinema is concerned about what the parliamentarian is going to say, when we know the parliamentarian is a consultant to the Senate for rules. And it's in the rules that they can disregard her opinion, because that's just an opinion that she has. They have ultimately the power as a Senate to pass certain things in the budget reconciliation. So we're going to continue advocating for the inclusion of immigration, because it does affect the budget. There's taxes and money that immigrants contribute. There's cost in providing a pathway to citizenship to immigrants. And so we totally believe that the budget reconciliation is a way that we can pass some sort of legislation for immigration. Advanced parole to travel abroad is still available. Advanced parole is a program that's available to people that have DACA and certain other work permits that allow us to leave the country. I was actually able to go to Mexico in 2017, right before, actually right after Trump got into office. We were afraid, but I was going with a group of students, 35 of us, none of us backed down. We said, we got the permit, we need to go. After 18 years, I was able to see my belated grandmother and hug her one last time because of this opportunity to travel abroad. And I was able to visit my other grandparents at graves, and it was healing to me. So it was very, very important to reconnect with my country. Since then, I also went back when my dad, as I shared before, he passed. And then I also went a third time with a study abroad program this past summer. I learned how to do that program, and I'm taking a group of 17 DACA recipients from Arizona, from California, and from New Jersey. This winter, we're gonna be visiting, they're gonna visit their family members, and we're gonna have a program for a week so that they can go there and have that experience. It's my way to pay it forward. It's such a blessing to be able to go back after so many years, not being able to reconnect with your roots. So that is still available. We've been fighting for that a lot, to have that ability, and it's been very difficult. Like, it's up to immigration if they give you that permit. So when any other US citizen can just you probably ask for permission at your job for your vacation or whatnot. And then you buy your tickets and off you go. For immigrants like myself, it's quite the process. I have to turn in an application, pay $575, and it's up to them if they consider that my reason for going is employment, educational, or humanitarian, like a burial or funeral. Those are the only reasons why I would be allowed to go out. Um, I can't wait to be a legal resident so I can not have to ask for permission every time I want to travel, and have that freedom to move. Um, but yeah, and then finally, I want to mention that right now, DACA and undocumented students in the state of Arizona have to pay out-of-state tuition because of our Superior Court here in Arizona, because of Prop 300, which we're trying to change next year in the ballot, at least part of it. Um, we still have to pay that out-of-state tuition. So let me see. I know I'm running out of time here, so I'm gonna. I think I have another 10 minutes. So let's see if we can wrap up the rest of the presentation here. What ways can you get involved, right? DACA renewals cost $495. So sometimes students, especially students, don't have the money to pay that every 2 years. It's actually every year and a half, because you have to send your application 5 to 6 months before it expires, to be able to pay this. So sometimes, we organize fundraisers, and we try to see if we can get like people to sponsor DACA recipients to have these fees covered. And we also participate, like we ask people to participate in our rallies or actions. Right now, because of COVID, like remotely, it's a way we've been asking people from across the nation to call on our senators here, Senator Sinema and Senator Kelly, to support a pathway or to citizenship through the budget reconciliation. Although we also recognize that the filibuster, it's another block for more inclusive reform, right, that is needed in immigration. So we're learning about what the filibuster is, educating our communities, and asking people to advocate for that piece to be either ended, or we talk about maybe it is something that is reformed. Of course, we're gonna push for the ending of it because we believe it is a Jim Crow relic. It has stopped a legislation instead of getting things done. But again, reforming it to where we would have a chance to move a bunch of legislation from climate to immigration to workers' rights to voter rights, right? It's so important and needed. Here's like our social medias where you can contact us, and I'm gonna rest. I have small presentation for a workshop, and I was gonna share these also in the keynote. Or stories. The stories are like super powerful, right? I share with you a little bit of my story, and I'm gonna do another like more expanded version. But I just wanted to point out that as immigrants, I cannot vote. I have my son that just turned 18 last year and voted for the first time. Finally, we had, as an immigrant family, someone that gave a voice to our family, right? And so to me, I remember in 2010, there were marches organized in Arizona against SB 1070, and we used to chant, "Today we march, tomorrow we vote." And to me, it took a decade for that to become a reality with my son finally. And I think that, statistics, I can tell you like how many DACA recipients have, been able to buy a house or get a better job. And yes, that's gonna raise your eyebrows and probably be like, oh, really? Like, that's interesting. However, stories change minds, right? Like, we need to make sure that as immigrants, we share our story, a little bit of my story that I shared already, and connecting that piece with my story of self, right? Like how I, as an immigrant, can be empowered to share my story or help my community members have their own voice and share their stories, connecting it to the rest of the community, and how it affects not just us as immigrants, but also the rest of our communities if we're removed, and the story of now, what's happening in this moment, and how we can work together to achieve our goal of having a pathway to citizenship, which is just the beginning. It's a new beginning to me because I still have to worry about the color of my skin. I still have to worry that my son could be, if he doesn't show his hands in the wheelchair, in the steering wheel when he stopped, that he could be shot by a cop. Like those are realities that we still have to face, and citizenship does not solve those issues, right? So going beyond citizenship, but that's the first step to recognizing that we have rights, to recognizing that we are human, right? So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can see me a little bit better. And I'm in the rest few minutes that I have, I am going to share a little bit more of my story. Karina Ruiz, she, her is Ella. I am from Oaxacan Zapoteco origins. My parents, Mauro and Virginia, born in Ecutla del Crespo, Oaxaca. They moved to Ciudad de Mexico. I was born in Tlalnepantla, Estado de Mexico. That was the first time my parents migrated. And then when I turned 15, they decided to migrate to Phoenix, Arizona, which since 1999, we decided to call home. We actually wanted to come to the US for just 1 year. And I say that with a smile because I have heard from many immigrants that we only come for a year and we fall in love with the place that we come to be a part of. That 1 year for me has turned into 2 decades, over 2 decades. I went to high school and didn't know if I was gonna be able to graduate from college. I was lucky to have a counselor that told me that she wasn't sure if I could go to college without a social security, but that we had nothing to lose with trying. So she encouraged me to apply. And she said, if they don't accept you, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But first, go and apply. Apply, I got accepted. I wanted to be an attorney, but because of my immigration status, I realized I couldn't. Little did I know that right now there are attorneys that are undocumented and also DACA or former DACA recipients. And I still have not let go completely of that dream. I have decided if I want to become a lawyer or a teacher or a professor. I want to leave my options open for now. First, let's get citizenship, and then I'll try to figure out where to go with my life. And it took me 12 years to get my Bachelor of Science in biochemistry, and I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. I decided to put my career on hold because these issues is really, my life is in the line and the life of many other people in my community like myself. So I decided that I had to do something about it. I didn't realize that there is a career for how to manage and be a leader in nonprofits. Otherwise, I would have probably taken that path. But with the help of mentors and other people in the community, I was able to, become a leader in the nonprofit sector. I have learned so much, from direct action to advocacy to strategy, tactics, what is like a power mapping, right? And realizing like the power that we have, and how does that relate to others? Like we're targets when we're doing or theory of change. So I had to learn all these terms and concepts along the lines of also learning how does a bill become a law in the state of Arizona and nationally. Um, how do I navigate things like political education for representatives, and how to really take different actions, just like what Monica shared about going to that step of saying, what else can I do? Like, I got myself arrested, I have done fastings. Um, NACASEC and other groups said, hey, let's show what commitment looks like. And I decided to shave my head without thinking twice about it, because I wanted to show Senator Cinema what commitment looks like, right? And ask her if I was able, if my hair, I was losing it during COVID, and I was terrified that I would go bald. It's a sign of beauty. Not just that, but in our culture, it's a sign of story, right? Your story, your dreams. Your hair tells so much about you and yourself. And I decided to shave it, and because I care more about justice than I care about my looks. I care more about that family reunification of my loved ones, not having to go through that pain, a family separation or being in deportation, more than, my hair is gonna grow back. And so to me, it was the moment, the time to show that courage and give hope to my community as well. Right now, I am giving myself a couple of years to develop leaders here locally that will take on the project of Arizona Dream Act Coalition and continue with our vision and mission, um, and hopefully achieve that pathway to citizenship within these next few years. Continue to learn, and then we'll see what lies in the future for me and for immigrants like myself. And yeah, so I think what I have learned is that I'm not alone, that there's other immigrants and there's people that are willing to help us out and open doors for us as immigrants to find our voice and to share, and spaces like this. And that we just need to be, more, just continue fighting. Si se puede. We have to find ingenious ways to change that narrative, because immigrants are here to stay. Immigrants are part of this community, and our stories are undeniable. Our stories are part of our community stories, and we just need to make sure that we have representatives. If I cannot vote, I can turn out people that can vote and be my voice in the polls. I can register family members and friends and have those family members and friends call. I can call some of my representatives. I realized that I didn't have to be a citizen to call on senators like Kristen Sinema, her office, because they still represent us. And so the work of empowering my community, I think, is what is helping me to move on and navigate through this time. I'm very positive that we will win, that we will deliver for our community and our people. And then seeking the next step, right? Like I said, citizenship is just the first step. There's a lot more work to do in the communities. And I hope that you enjoy my presentation. With that, I think we have some time for questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Karina, for sharing with us your story and sharing with us your hopes towards comprehensive immigration reform. We really, really appreciate having you here today. We do have questions. The first question for you is, has COVID significantly affected actions and progress towards preserving the DACA program?
Yes, I mean, COVID affected all of us, right? I think the way of organizing, we didn't realize how we had to shift really to, and especially because a lot of our community members, especially we do intergenerational work. some of the older folks that are monolingual didn't know how to use Zoom, right? So having them into these meetings with representatives to advocate, sometimes they're the ones who are in those meetings because their children are in school, right? And sometimes it's hard. So it definitely opened our eyes up to doing a better job of technology training for those older generations, and having our young people really work together alongside with their moms or dads or the tias, to continue moving the work forward, also to keep our community engaged and keep them informed. If I wasn't so embedded into this work, I wouldn't have a clue of what's going on with DACA right now, because things change so rapidly, so quickly. I didn't tell you all the changes that happened in between before July 16. I was like, let me tell you what it was, and let me tell you where it is right now, because it's definitely crazy. We had organized food banks. We transitioned from like organizing right at the core of the pandemic. We had to see the need in our community. There was a need for food banks. We organized with other groups to, in a safe way, bring that first need to our community. And so definitely it has affected us, but I believe we're resilient. I believe we have figured out how to uh, juggle and hustle, I should say. And the first thing for us is like making sure that the well-being of our community is priority, including mental health. So we also did like Zooms and webinars about mental health for immigrants, since we don't have access to that. So that was a big part of it too.
Thank you. Do you have another question? What would the ideal immigration reform look like to you? For example, who should it support? What time should it take for the entire process, and so on?
Wow. Yeah, so I wish it was tomorrow. The way we look at it, it's probably going to take way longer than that. But the ideal would be, and people sometimes tell me, Karina, this is open borders. I'm like, borders are, I believe, man-made. If we had a wall between Arizona and California, right, it'd be crazy. Like people wouldn't, if you had to show your documents every time you cross, I'm pretty sure people would find out that the life of immigrants is like a different reality, right? And that it doesn't make sense. To me, ideal immigration reform has to be inclusive. It has to include people that are the 11 million, so people that have been living here, and also people that want to migrate illegally, or refugees, asylum seekers. When we talk about immigration, oftentimes they try to pin us against one another. Like right now, they're using the narrative of the caravans. Oh, the caravans are coming, and there's millions of people that will come. Let me tell you that if people are given an opportunity to come legally, more often than not, people will. People don't like to risk their lives in the border, where we know that there's more than 3,000 unidentified remains, that we have people that are looking for their loved ones, and we have been helping efforts to match the DNA of people that are waiting for their loved ones, that they didn't lost contact with them in the border. So that's, when I crossed the border, my mom did not want my other brothers and sister to come through the border, because we realized how dangerous it was. So 4 months after my dad passed away, my two brothers were able to come with a work visa. They're about to go back to Mexico next week. And it was so happy for me to see they reunited with my mother. I still have to reunite my sister. But my brothers went through the process, and it wasn't that terribly complex. And we were able to, we were blessed to have an employer here that my husband knew. He works for them, and they wanted to do this program of the temporary workers. So my brothers came, so I believe that we cannot only just talk about those people who are already living here, but also those people that are wanting to migrate legally, either temporarily or on a more permanent basis. We wouldn't have the issues of having to have all these millions of people as undocumented in a decade. If we provide, while we fix legalization for people here, also providing a way for people to come, not waiting 10, 15 years. People, that's why become undocumented, because the wait for those legal ways and processes is like decades. People can't wait that long to feed their loved ones, their families. So we have to cross as undocumented. That's really the reason why people decide to take that trip on the border, or they feel insecure in their country of origin, that you can't wait a decade until, I mean, you'll be dead by then. They'll probably kill you or kidnap you, so we have to work simultaneously in something that's for people here, a legalization, as well as people that want to come legally, either temporary or on a more permanent basis. Freedom to move is what we call it.
Thank you, Karina. Our next question, and you've touched a little bit about it, but specifically in Arizona, are there any U.S. House of Representative members that have not been as helpful with DACA?
Yeah, specifically in Arizona, I mean, I have to tell you, like, we're nonpartisan, but when we reach out to our representatives, right? I can tell you, Raul Grijalva is always down to meeting with us and talking and learning from our stories. There's Greg Stanton, Ruben Gallegos, and then there's the other people on the other side, Republicans mainly, that usually don't want to meet with us, or when we meet with their staff, they're very diminishing. They're really about, oh, we need to put more enforcement in the border. Again, that narrative of we need to, instead of facilitating migration, criminalize and stop migration. Those are the conversations that we've been able to have with people like the staffers from Debbie Lesko, from Paul Gosha doesn't even meet with us. So there's some, and again, as nonpartisan, we have to educate people on what all of these representatives, where they standing with immigration, so that people have that access to information in our campaigns that we make. We're working on getting our C4, because we realize that we really need to be more outspoken in our community about how to engage politically immigrants that cannot vote, but they have their communities and their families and niches, their nucleus that they can really mobilize and engage. But yeah, there's definitely, usually Democrats. I mean, I can't help it, but they're the ones who are more open to listening to us than the other side. So, but we reach out to all of them when we do.
Thank you. All right. How do you keep up motivation and hope during recent struggles to pass a pathway to citizenship under the Biden administration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's so funny because when we were fighting to barely survive during the Trump administration, right? And we were more in the defensive, like, no, we're not what this administration says we are. We're actually contributors in our communities. We're actually, people who are part of this community, like we're students, we're workers. And then we worked so hard to change that representation, right? And we realized that with this new administration, I remember in a personal capacity with United We Dream Action, which I'm a member of, going to, it was Las Vegas, when President Biden was in campaign. And I had the opportunity of asking him if he could commit to stop deportations on his first 100 days. By then, he had already talked to many dreamers, many DACA recipients, and he said yes, and then he said no criminals, and then I told him, did you know that a father that was deported because of a traffic stop, and if he comes back and re-enters, that's a felony, and he's categorized as a criminal equal to a murderer? And he was like, kind of like, I didn't know that. And then he said, okay, yes. And we got it like on tape. It was like such an awkward moment because he was like, no, yes, no, yes, kind of thing. He did it. He tried, right? And we thought to ourselves, we have to double up in the efforts. Like we really have to push. Like this is the time when we can be in the offensive and really push this administration to deliver on their promises of campaign for immigrants. But then the court stopped that, right? So it's been so rough because it's not just the president, but then the slim majority and the moderate Democrats in the Senate, slim majority and that moderates in the House of Representatives, representatives like Tom O'Halloran met with our mothers. And yet he's like, oh, I don't know about this. And we're like, how could you not know about it? Like you looked at these people that you're leaving out in the eyes. You looked at them. And that's when, you know, these politicians start realizing, okay, it's bigger. They live in a bubble and they don't really know how our lives are. That's why it's so important for us to educate them about the issue. But definitely it's been, again, like more work to push this administration to deliver. But we won't stop. You know, we're figuring out how to take care of ourselves with mental health and all this in order to not be burned out. But we cannot. But the way that I find hope is like whenever I see someone that comes to our office and they're like, Karina, like I got my first like house, right? For example, or like we help people to become citizens, and then last November, they took a picture, right? They say, where are the polls? And they took a picture, right? And we help them become citizens. Like, oh my gosh, I'm getting chills, right? With this program that we're planning for the winter and the summer with advanced parole, we're able to reunite young immigrants with their grandparents, with sometimes their parents or siblings that were deported. That is where we find that joy. That's where we connect and we say, what we're doing, it's working. It's not working maybe for all of us, but we are making a real life difference and change in some of our community members. When I get to enjoy that benefit, this next week is gonna be the 1-year anniversary of my dad's passing, and I've been blessed. I got my advanced parole, and I'm gonna be able to be there with my family for that moment. That's life changing. That's healing for me. Those are the moments where I find joy. I enjoy my children, and I go, okay, you guys, if my generation doesn't takes down that border, and we've gone with trips with them to Nogales, and I remember they saw the border a few years back, and then after Trump, it had the wire, and they were like, Mom, why is it like that? And I explained to them, right, like, what does it mean? They understand about politics as sons of immigrants. And I remember when Trump got elected, I came home and they said, Mom, did you see what happened? I said, what happened? Trump got elected. Does that mean he's gonna deport you? Like, this was my 7-year-old that shouldn't have to worry about it, you know? So, but I'm glad that they've been having that conscience, right, about their role and how important it is for them to represent immigrants and people and their heritage. So yeah, it's been crazy. We're looking for a break, and then there's midterm elections next year. We've done a lot of like civic engagement, knocking on doors in 110 degrees. We're like going knocking on doors, sharing our stories, telling voters like, you need to be registered, you need to what information, here's the information you need. And the census was another part. Like, it's definitely been burdensome, but we find joy in our resilience. Like, I love to dance, I love to Zumba. If you follow me on Facebook, you will see I do Zumba because that's what keeps me going, right? Like, we have to find ways to live a joyful, best life that we can.
Thank you so much, Karina. I think that's a really powerful way to end our event tonight. Thank you again for taking the time to share with us. Yeah, thank you so much, Karina. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.